يا زهراء بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا المبعوث رحمة للعالمين النبي الأمي العربي المكي المدني القرشي الهاشمي الذي سمي في السماء بأبي الزهراء أحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتقبين المنتجبين لا سيما على بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء واللعنة الدائمة الصرمدية الأبدية على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والأرض بعد ذلك دحاها. صدق الله العلي العظيم. ارفعوا أصواتكم بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. سلام على مرابد قدسك يا حسين، سلام على مرابد قدسك، سلام على أفناء تهرك، سلام على كل غور ونجد يقودني إليك فيشرق من بين هنايا القلوب نور بهائك وحسنك. سلام على دمك المراق، سلام على شيبك الخبيب، سلام على خدك الثريب، سلام على الحبيب يا أحب من كل حبيب. يا حسين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. As our brother mentioned, today we'll be here to celebrate the day of Dahw al-Ardh. Dahw al-Ardh is not one of the dates in the year that is the most well known, but is nonetheless a very important day in the Islamic calendar. As most of you will know, the significance of this day is with regards to the spreading of the earth when Allah created the earth and He spread the earth. And that's why I thought we should begin by discussing very briefly the significance of this day using a hadith from one of the Imams, Imam al-Ardh alayhi salatu wassalam. He mentions that the night of the 25th of the al-Qa'dah was the night that Ibrahim was born alayhi salam and that Isa alayhi salam was born, and on that night the earth was spread under the Kaaba. Then he says, so whomsoever was to fast on that day, it would be as if he has fasted for 60 months. Here we see something very interesting, and of course we see that the earth was spread from beneath the Kaaba. And I'm sure that those of you who are here today, you would have seen the title of the lecture was, which is superior, Mecca or Karbala? And you may be thinking, what does that have to do with the spreading of the earth from underneath the Kaaba? But that will become clear, inshallah, as the discussion goes on. So we see that this day is significant because it is the day of the birth of prophets, Ibrahim and Isa. Ibrahim, the one who built the Kaaba, and Isa on the miraculous day of his birth, a day of worship, a day of fasting, and so on. So we see that the earth under the Kaaba was honored on this day by being the earth that is used to be spread and create all of the lands in the earth. So this is an honor for the land underneath the Kaaba. And for this reason, the Quran names this land, the land of Mecca under the Kaaba, as al-Qura. Al-Qura means the mother of all towns. The reason for why it was given this name is because it was the earth through which all the other lands were made. Therefore it is called al-Qura. And of course this is a side point, but we see in the Quran that and we saw in the khutbah as well that I recited, that we referred to the Prophet as an-Nabiy al-Ummi, the Prophet that is from al-Qura, as per the narrations of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. We see that the Nawasib use this title and they say that this means that Rasulullah didn't know how to read and write. But our Imams alayhi salam, they curse this opinion. The Imam says, كَذَبُوا عَلَيْهِمْ لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ. When someone came to him and they said to him that the people say that this means that Rasulullah could not read and write, the Imam said they have lied, upon them is the curse of Allah. Rather it means that he is from al-Qura, the mother of all of the towns, Makkah and Mukarram. So as you know, Makkah holds a special significance in Islam. Makkah is the place where we go for Hajj, for Umrah, is the place, and the Kaaba specifically is the direction in which we pray our daily prayers every day. In some ways it shapes our identity as Muslims. When you see Islam being spoken about anywhere, it is the Kaaba that is shown. This is the center or the focal point that people recognize the Muslims through. So it's important that we understand the reason for the sanctity of this holy place, so that further discussions today become a lot clearer. When we understand the reason for why something is sacred, then we can understand the discussion as we go forward. The first point that we see, and we love to always start with the Quran. So we start with the ayah of the Quran where Allah says after the Basmala, إِنَّ أَوَّلَ بَيْتٍ وُضِعَ لِلنَّاسِ لَلَّذِي بِبَكَّةَ مُبَارَكًا وَهُدًى لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Indeed, the first house that was placed for the people is the one that is in Bakkah, blessed and a guidance for all of the worlds. فِيهِ آيَاتٌ بَيِّنَاتٌ. In it there are clear signs. مَقَامُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ, the position of Ibrahim. وَمَنْ دَخَلَهُ كَانَ آمِنًا. And the one who enters it will be safe, will be in the sanctuary. وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. And for Allah, there is the Hajj, the pilgrimage to this holy house, for that person that has the ability to do so. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. And whosoever turns away, then Allah is wealthy and is not in need of all of the worlds. So this is the ayah that we want to break down a little bit in order to understand the significance of Makkah. We start with the ayah where it says, إِنَّ أَوَّلَ بَيْتٍ وُضِعَ لِلنَّاسِ لَلَّذِي بِبَكَّةَ مُبَارَكًا وَهُدًى لِلْعَالَمِينَ. That this is the house that was placed, the first house that was placed in Bakkah. So the first question that comes here is, we know the place as Makkah. Why does the Quran refer to it as Bakkah? And there are many explanations for this. Many explanations have been given by the linguists, for example, explaining that Bakkah may have been an older name of Makkah. Or, for example, the root word being connected to weeping and other descriptions like this. From the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, what they mention is that Bakkah refers to the specific vicinity of the Kaaba, and Makkah refers to the entire town. Therefore, the ayah says Bakkah. Then the ayah says, after that, فِيهِ آيَاتٌ بَيِّنَاتٌ. In it are signs that are clear. So these are the signs of this holy place that give it its sanctity, that give it its importance in our religion. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the signs, the ayat that are bayinat, right? Some of the things that are already mentioned there. We speak about Maqam Ibrahim, but the first thing that we want to start with is the story of the black stone. The black stone, as we all know, is an ayah from the holiest things, and one of the things that we go to see, to testify in front of, to kiss, is the black stone. So that is where we would like to start this story. We have a hadith in Al-Kafi from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam where he explains the story of the black stone. The narration is quite long, so I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to read some parts for you in order so that we can understand the gist of what the narration is trying to say. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that the black stone was originally an angel. كان ملكا من عظماء الملاك. It was an angel from the greatest of the angels. So what happened? How did it become a stone? And how did it be in the Kaaba? This is the story. This was the question that Imam Sadiq was asked. So Imam Sadiq, he begins, and I might be not even be reading the narration in order. I'm reading it so that it can be chronological in terms of the story, so that it can be understood. The Imam says, لما أخذ الله الميثاق له بالربوبية ولمحمد بالنبوة ولعلي بالوصية. When Allah took the covenant from all of creation for His own lordship, for Rasulullah's prophethood, and for the successorship of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the narration mentions استقت فرائص الملائكة. All of the angels were trembling in awe when this covenant was being taken. This covenant was a great covenant. The lordship of Allah, the Nabuwah of Rasulullah, the fact that Imam Ali is the wasi. فأول من أسرع إلى الإقرار ذلك الملك لم يكن فيهم أشد حبا لمحمد وآل محمد منه. That angel, the one that becomes the black stone later on, was the one that rushed towards the covenant, this covenant. And he was the one that loved Rasulullah and Al Rasulullah from the angels. There was none that loved them more than him. وَلِذَلِكَ اخْتَارَهُ اللَّهُ مِنْ بَيْنِهِمْ وَأَلْهَمَهُ الْمِيثَاقَ. And for that reason, Allah chose that angel and made it the one who testifies for the covenant. So this angel, it was the first of the angels to affirm the covenant, and because of his immense love for Al-Muhammad, Allah entrusted him with the covenant of all of creation. Then the Imam carries on in the story. What happens so that it becomes a stone? The Imam mentions that when Adam was descended from paradise, because of the problems that Adam went through, he forgot the covenant that he had made. So Allah transformed this angel into a shining white jewel, and He sent it down to Adam in the place that he was. As soon as Adam saw the stone, it reminded him of the covenant. So he began to cry and to kiss it, and he humbled himself before the stone. So this is one of the origins of kissing the black stone. It is to do with the covenant. And the covenant, as we know, is in three parts, as has been mentioned in the previous lectures, in the meanings of Salah, and all of the lectures that we have. The covenant is three parts. And Adam, the first human being on earth, he was reminded by this covenant by the black stone. So the black stone is the place in which we testify to that covenant. So the Imam says, when we go to Mecca and we kiss the black stone, this is تجديدا لذلك العهد والميثاق وتجديدا للبيع. He says that this is for us to renew our covenant and our pledge, and a renewal of our allegiance. Allegiance to what? To these three things: the lordship of Allah, the Nabuwah of Rasulullah, and the Wilayah of Imam. So this is why the Imam says, when we stand in front of the stone, what do we say? He says, أَلَا تَرَى أَنَّكَ تَقُولُ. Do you not see that when you go in front of the black stone, what have you been taught to say? You say, أَمَانَتِي أَدَّيْتُهَا وَمِيثَاقِي تَأَهَدْتُ لِتَشْهَدَ لِي بِالْمُوَافَاتِ. That this is the trust that I am returning, my undertaking that I had taken on upon me. So bear witness in my favor that I have fulfilled my obligation. My obligation to what? To the three things that this stone represents. And then the Imam says, وَوَاللَّهِ مَا يُؤَدِّي ذَلِكَ أَحَدٌ غَيْرُ شِيعَتَنَا. And none are able to complete this covenant except for our Shia. وَلَا حَفِظَ ذَلِكَ الْأَحْدِ وَالْمِيثَاقِ أَحَدٌ غَيْرُ شِيعَتِنَا. And no one has preserved that undertaking or that covenant except for our Shia. And then the Imam, he ends in the reports by saying, on the Day of Judgment, the black stone will testify for or against people. It will come with a speaking tongue and two eyes. So this is the first ayah of the vicinity that we are speaking about in terms of the Kaaba, in terms of Mecca, the black stone. And the black stone represents these three important, these are the things that are etched into existence, as has been mentioned in our previous lectures. So these three testimonies are what we show our testimony for in front of the black stone. This is one of the ayat of the Kaaba. The second ayah we want to speak about is the one that the Quran mentions, Maqam Ibrahim. And the significance of this is what? that Makkah is a land that many of the prophets visited and are buried in. We all know the famous ones that are mentioned. For example, we have Adam, Ibrahim, Ismail, Rasulullah himself, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. But there's also reports about many other prophets that visited the land of Makkah, including Nuh, Hud, Salih. And this is mentioned in the reports. We do not have time to go through them right now, but it's mentioned in the reports. And some of the reports mention that under the Kaaba, there are 70 prophets buried. And as you know, 70 in the Arabic language is used sometimes to just refer to a large number. It's possible that there are more prophets buried under there. So this is a place of sanctity. For that reason also, the visiting of the prophets, the burials of the prophets there. And all of these prophets, why did they visit Makkah? For the same reason as we mentioned with regards to the black stone. To reinstate and renew their covenant, to bear witness to the Tawheed, to the Risalah of Rasulullah, to the Wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And we know all of the prophets were sent with the Wilayah. We have whole chapters in book like, for example, Basar al-Darajat we have in front of me here. There's a whole chapter with mentions مَا نُبِّئَ نَبِيٌّ قَدْ إِلَّا بِوِلَايَتِنَا وَبِفَضْلِنَا أَمَّنْ سِوَانَا. That there was no prophet that was sent for prophethood except with our wilayah and the knowledge that we are greater than anyone that is other than us. So this is the prophets coming to Makkah. And of course, as Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen, it would be lacking if I didn't mention the birth of Amir al-Mu'mineen in the Kaaba. This follows the same path of wilayah that we are speaking about from the time of Adam, from before Adam. The same path of wilayah. From the Adam who brought the black stone to the Kaaba, which testified to wilayah, to this point where Ali, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the title of wilayah is born in the Kaaba. And he is from its greatest ayat. As he's referred to in his ziyarat, we mention Ayatullah al-Uzma. Ayatullah al-Uzma is Amir al-Mu'mineen. In the reality of this title, there is none that can be called this title except for Amir al-Mu'mineen in its reality. This birth wasn't an ordinary birth, as it was a birth that purified the Kaaba. As we all know, the Kaaba was a place that was already holy from the beginning. But there were those who made it, in some ways they made it impure by having their idols inside, by taking away the sanctity of this place. They took away from the sanctity by doing these things. So Allah purified the Kaaba such that it became a Qiblah. And it's not me that says this. It's Abu al-Fadl himself. Abu al-Fadl in his sermon before Imam al-Husayn leaves Mecca to go towards Karbala, Abu al-Fadl, he goes on top of the Kaaba to give this sermon. And we will come back to the sermon later on as well. But right now we just want to speak about one line that he mentions in this sermon. But first I want you to think about the scenario. Think about this moment. And we're not far from the days of Muharram, and specifically not far from the days that Imam al-Husayn left Mecca. So imagine this scenario. Imam al-Husayn begins to walk away from the Kaaba. The people that are there, they continue their tawaf. They're not interested. They're not looking. They are not caring about the fact that Imam al-Husayn, he's leaving the Kaaba, he's leaving Mecca. So Abu al-Fadl looks towards Imam al-Husayn, he gets the indication. Abu al-Fadl goes and he stands on top of the Kaaba. Think about this for a moment. Mecca is loud. For those of you who have been to do tawaf, everyone is loud. People are labayk Allahumma labayk, making dua, crying. In this moment, everyone becomes silent. Abu al-Fadl has come on top of the Kaaba. In our South Asian culture, what we say is that a house is a good thing, but it only becomes a home when there is an alam on top of it. This is the house that the flag bearer himself is standing upon now. Abu al-Fadl, he stands on top of the Kaaba. He looks towards Abu Abdullah. Imam al-Husayn looks towards Abbas. All of the people doing the tawaf around the Kaaba look towards Abbas. Perhaps in this moment, even the Kaaba itself looks at Abbas. What does he start by saying? He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, الحمد لله الذي شرف هذا بقدوم أبيه من كان بالأمس بيتا أصبح قبلة. He says, may praise be to Allah, the one who honored this, speaking about the Kaaba, by the coming of his father, pointing at Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. That which yesterday was just a house, today has become a Qiblah. By the honor of the coming of his father. What is Al-Abbas pointing towards here? He's saying, you guys, you're doing tawaf of the Kaaba. The real person here that you should be focusing on is over there. His father is the one that honored this house, such that it became a Qibla. And of course here we must indicate towards the other holy lands prior to the Kaaba becoming the Qibla. We know that it was Bayt al-Maqdis. And today there are many who try to take away the significance of this land as well, due to, for example, geopolitics and things that are going on. People like to look at some of the reports that we have, and it is true, we have reports that say, for example, Masjid al-Aqsa is not in Bayt al-Maqdis, it is in the heavens. This is true, we have this in our reports. But Bayt al-Maqdis doesn't mean it's not a sacred area. This is an area that was Mihrab al-Anbiya. The Anbiya prayed towards this. The Muslims prayed towards this before the Qibla was changed. All of the prophets of Banu Israel had a deep connection with this area. Hence why Rasulullah also visited there on the Mi'raj. So we should not let ourselves be confused to think that the land is not sacred. But at the same time, if I ask anyone which is more sacred, Mecca or Bayt al-Maqdis, it's very clear in your minds. Mecca is, of course, greater. So we see that the significance of this land, Mecca, is great. It is the land which Allah spread the earth from, where He placed His home, the house, the black stone, where all of the prophets came, where all of the prophets are buried, where Rasulullah was born, Mecca, where he lived much of his life, where Ali bin Abi Talib was born, and also a Qibla for the Muslims to represent the direction physically towards Allah. We spoke about meanings of Salah. The direction of our hearts is towards the Imam of our time. But physically, the direction is towards the Kaaba. This is an honor. And these are the ayats of the vicinity of the Kaaba. What an honor this is for the land of Mecca. And despite all of this, there's one thing that I'd like to mention. Just as a side point, just remember this hadith on the side point. And this hadith, by the way, is one that is accepted not only by the Shia, but also by those who oppose the school of Ahlul Bayt. Rasulullah says, looking at the Kaaba, speaking to the Kaaba, He says, لَقَدْ شَرَّفَكِ اللَّهِ. Allah has honored you. وَكَرَّمَكِ. And has, I'm going to say honored again, in terms of translation. وَعَظَّمَكِ. And made you great. But what? وَالْمُؤْمِنُ أَعْظَمُ غُرْمَةً مِنْكَ. And the believer is more in sanctity than you. Despite all of the things that we have read. Why does Rasulullah say this? What is it about the mu'min that makes him such? It is the mu'min that has been tested in his heart. And he has the wilayah of his Imam. That is what makes that mu'min have greater sanctity than the Kaaba itself. Despite all of this history. From here we understand one very simple principle. The simple principle is what? Is that the greater wilayah a thing has, or a person has, its sanctity becomes greater in the eyes of Allah. Whether that be a normal mu'min, or whether that be a land. The connection to wilayah, to the Imam of the time, that is what gives something its sanctity. And Mecca is great in the significance, as we have already mentioned, with regards to the black stone and its testification of wilayah, with regards to the maqamat of the prophets, with regards to the birth of Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is a great connection to wilayah. And of course, when we speak about Mecca, it's impossible to speak about its blessed nature without speaking about the Hajj towards it, which takes us towards the last part of that verse that we were discussing. وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. And for Allah, there is a pilgrimage to the house for those people who are able to do so. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. And those who turn away, then Allah is not in need of all of the people. And the Hajj is something that is of course very significant in our religion as well. It is like the other important acts of obligation and worship. If you've been to the lecture say before, I've already mentioned the meanings of salah, or even the lecture about maqam of Hamza. The one thing that has been consistent that we have found in the Quran and the riwayat constantly is that no worship of ours is accepted without wilayah. How does that manifest in different forms of worship? That is the discussion that we want to have. We spoke about, for example, what that means for salah. And one of the manifestations of the wilayah in the salah being the third testimony that we recite in the tashahhud, where we know, in fact, all of salah in its reality is the imam of the time, as well as fasting. And the imam is the origin of the religion. Hajj is no different. It's not different at all. It's also a manifestation of our wilayah and our connection to the imam of our time. So when a person goes to Hajj, this is the significance of speaking to the black stone, declaring we have stood by our covenant to say that I am on the true wilayah, I am with the imam of my time. And the person that does not have this, what Hajj do they have in reality? If the testification in front of the black stone is of those 3 testimonies that the black stone was sent for, then anybody that does not have those 3 testimonies, what Hajj do they have? When we go back to the sermon of al-Ardh, look how he speaks to the people doing tawaf at that time. He says, أَيُّهَا الْكَفَرَةُ الْفَجْرَةُ, O you disbelieving immoral people. Think about the statement that al-Fadl is making here. Who are the people that are doing tawaf around the Kaaba at this time? Are they not Muslims? Do they not believe in Rasulullah? Are they not wearing ihram? Are they not walking around saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik? But al-Fadl, he addresses them in this manner. Then he says, أَتَصُدُّونَ طَرِيقَ الْبَيْتِ لِلْإِمَامِ الْبَرَرَةِ, do you close off the path to the house from the Imam of the righteous? مَنْ هُوَ أَحَقُّ بِهِ مِنْ سَائِرِ الْبَرِيَّةِ وَمَنْ هُمْ أَدْنَى بِهِ, the one who is more deserving to it than all of creation, and who is closer to it than he. وَلَوْلَا حِكْمُ اللَّهِ الْجَلِيَّةِ وَأَسْرَارُهُ الْعَلِيَّةِ وَإِخْتِبَارُهُ الْبَرِيَّةِ لَطَارَ الْبَيْتُ إِلَيْهِ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَمْشِي لَدَيْهِ. He says, if it wasn't for the manifest wisdom of Allah, His exalted secrets and His testing of creation, the house itself would have flown towards him before he walked towards it. وَقَدْ اسْتَلَمَ النَّاسُ الْحَجَرَ وَالْحَجْرُ يَسْتَلِمُ يَدَيْهِ. The people touch the black stone while the stone itself kisses the hands of Allah. This is the Imam of the time that we are speaking about here. Even in front of the Kaaba of the Kaaba is Husayn in that moment. In all moments is the Imam of the time. al-Fadl, in this moment, when he speaks to these people in this way, do not think that it is exaggeration. al-Fadl is emotional. No. al-Fadl, he sees with the eyes of reality. The Imam describes al-Fadl as Nafir al-Basira, the one who has deep insight. He has basira, he's able to see with reality. When he speaks to those people and he says, Ya ayyuha al-kafaratul fajara, that is exactly what they are when they turn away from the Imam of the time, even if they continue their tawaf around the Kaaba. So we see, therefore, the conditions of the acceptance of Hajj has to be inclusive of the Imam of the time. And we have this from the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, and this is narrated in Wilayah al-Imamah, he mentions al-aam alladhi la yashhadu sahib hadha al-amr al-mawsim la yuqbal min al-nasi hajjuh. He says the year that the season of Hajj does not see the Imam of the time, the Imam does not come to Hajj, the people who have done Hajj, their Hajj is not accepted. This is the reality of Hajj. The same way that we spoke about Salah, fasting, Wilayah being a crucial point in your Salah, in your fasting, the Hajj is the same. And this is its manifestation. If the Imam is not present during the Hajj is not accepted. And this is why the Imams, it was from their seerah, that they would try their best to attend the Hajj every year. Of course, I'm not saying that if the Imam, for example, he's physically in another place, he's not able to go and do Hajj. I'm sure the Imams, they would have done this. But even if the Imam is physically in another place, he's able to go. But the Imams, even physically, they would make an effort to go to Hajj in order that their followers and their Hajj is accepted. So think about the philosophy of Hajj and the land of Makkah now that you know this and that we are discussing this. That your goal in Hajj are two things. Testimony to the black stone, to the covenant of Islam, and being in the presence of the Imam of the time. And then, when you understand these two things, perhaps the rewards of Hajj start to make sense as well. When you understand all of your sins being purified. We mentioned, for example, Allahumma ij'alni min hujaj baytika al-haram, al-mabruri hajjuhum, al-mashkuri sa'yuhum, al-maghfuri dhunubuhum, al-mukaffiri anhum sayyatihim. That those people who do the Hajj of the house of Allah, their sins are all forgiven. Their mistakes are all put to the side. And look at the word that's used here, by the way. Al-mabruri hajjuhum. Those whose Hajj is made to be righteous. Righteous through what? Abu al-Fadl explained it. The Imam al-Barr, the Imam of the righteous, is the Imam that makes your Hajj mabrur. And in Shahr Ramadan, you see all of these du'as, they point towards this reality that we are making du'a to be part of the Hujjaj. We say in some of the du'as, fi ami hada wa fi kulli am. In this year and every year, let me be from the Hujjaj. Why? What is the philosophy of this? In your fasting in Shahr Ramadan, when you begin your first day of Shahr Ramadan, what is the lead up to in Shahr Ramadan? It's to Laylatul Qadr. Laylatul Qadr is the night of the Imam of the time, the night where the angels descend min kulli amr upon the Imam of our time. So the fasting here as well, when we're speaking about Hajj and the connection to Wilayah, we're speaking about fasting, it also has the connection to Wilayah. And it is a manifestation of our Wilayah to be present in the Hajj, to be in the presence of the Imam, and to be present in Mecca. When you think about the possibilities here as well, we know that the Dhuhr is in the month of Muharram, 1 month after the Hajj period. So in every year, if you are there, then the likelihood is that you may be there for the Dhuhr. So you can see another connection to the Imam of our time with regards to this dua. Recite Salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
So then, as we speak about Hajj, we have to speak about its rewards and the comparison that is made in the ahadith with regards to Hajj and Ziyarah. And of course, we are making a comparison here today between the Holy Lands as well. Some people, they don't like this. They say, why do you make comparisons? Why do you have to rank prophets and imams and lands? And they're all important. Why do you have to rank them? And the answer to this for me is very simple. It's not me that's doing it. The Imams alayhi salam, they have a whole genre of reports where they make these comparisons. So we are just following in the footsteps of the Imams. The multiple narrations that make the comparisons, we have to understand them. The Imams are trying to tell us something. So we have to discuss them and understand what is being said in these ahadith. So we have many famous narrations with regards to the comparison between the reward for Hajj and the reward for the Ziyarah. And it shows that the reward for Hajj is a percentage of the reward of the Ziyarah of Abdullah. And the reports in relation to this are many. Some of them, for example, will say that it is equal to a Umrah. Some will say that it is equal to a Hajj and a Umrah. Some will say, for example, they are equal to 20. Others will say 100. Others will say more than that. If we go through some of the chapters of Kamil Ziyarat, we see some of these narrations. And I'll just read a few for you. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says, زيارة قبر الحسين وزيارة قبر رسول الله وزيارة قبور الشهداء تعدل حجة مبرورة مع رسول الله. He says, going to the ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn, or the grave of Rasulullah, or the graves of the martyrs of Uhud specifically, is equal to performing a purified Hajj with the Messenger of Allah. We have another narration from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, where someone asks him, or rather Imam asks him, he says, "O Shihab, how many times have you performed Hajj?" And he mentions, I have done it 19 times. I've done Hajj 19 times. In today's age, that would cost you a fortune. Yeah? But this individual, he's done 19 Hajj. The Imam says to him, complete the 20th Hajj so that they can be registered like one Ziyarah of Abu Abdullah for you. What is the Imam trying to say here? He's trying to explain that the reward for Hajj is a percentage of the reward of the Ziyarah of Abu Abdullah. But what's the metric here? How come the numbers differ? Why are the Imams naming different levels of reward for different people? And the secret to this is found in the reports themselves. The Imam says, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, "Man ata qabr al-Husayn, arifan bihaqqihi, kana kaman hajja mi'at hajja ma'a Rasulullah." He says, the one who comes to the Ziyarah of Abu Abdullah, arifan bihaqqihi, knowing of his rights, with the ma'rifah of Abu Abdullah. And who knows Abu Abdullah haqqa ma'rifat? Of course, this is speaking on layers, right? Someone can be having ma'rifah at a lower level, and some will have a higher level. But none can know the true reality of Abu Abdullah. But those who are on a higher level of ma'rifah, this could be the level of reward that is for you. For other narrations, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he mentioned, he was asked, قُلْتُ لَهُ مَا لِمَنْ أَتَى قَبْرَ الْحُسَيْنِ زَائِرًا عَارِفًا بِحَقِّهِ غَيْرَ مُسْتَكْبِرٍ وَلَا مُسْتَكْنِفٍ. He says, what is for the one who comes to the Ziyarah of Abu Abdullah while knowing his rights and without any pride or arrogance? The Imam responded, 1,000 purified Hajj and 1,000 purified Umrah will be registered for them. And even if they are from the wretched ones, they will be registered among the blissful ones. And they will be continuously in the rahmah of Allah Azza wa Jal. So we can see that it is based on ma'rifah. How much the individual understands Hussein. How close is he to Hussein? Why? Again, we come back to the same principle. The closer you are to Abu Abdullah, you're closer to the Imam of your time. This is the metric everywhere. That it depends on the ma'rifah of the individual, of the Imam of their time. And Imam al-Husayn's mission is directly connected to the mission of Imam Sa'ib Zaman. When one is in the vicinity of Karbala, knowing of Imam al-Husayn's rights, he's more knowing of Imam al-Hujjah's rights. And the connection of the land of Hussein with Imam al-Hujjah is greater than the connection of the land of Mecca. And that's why the reward is mentioned as greater. We see constantly that the Imams they're constantly emphasizing this to their Shia. Even though it is based on ma'rifah, the Imam constantly is explaining that Hajj has a percentage of the reward. That is constant regardless. However, the ma'rifah will determine how much of a percentage for you. Some people have a problem with this in their heads. They say, Hajj is wajib. How can you accept these hadith? Do they not go against the Quran? It's a fair question. Hajj is wajib. That is how it's said, right? So this leads to two questions when this individual makes a statement. The first thing, the question that you need to ask is it a principle that anything that is wajib carries more reward than something that is not wajib? And the second question is, who said that the Ziyarah of Imam Hussein is not wajib? So the first question, do wajib actions carry more reward than non-obligatory actions? We know this isn't a rule. Many of us, we have many examples of things that are recommended that are greater in reward than something that is wajib. For example, and this is a very simple example, when someone comes and says salam to someone else, is it wajib for you to say salam to another believer? No, it's mustahab. It's mustahab for you to say salam, initiate greeting towards a believer. It's mustahab, it's recommended. But responding to that salam, is it wajib or mustahab? It's wajib to respond. But who gets the greater reward? We know from the reports, the one who initiates salam, he gets 99 rewards, while the one who responds gets 1. Even though the responding is wajib and initiating is mustahab. The same way we have the example of Salatul Layl. All of the obligatory prayers that we pray in the daytime, we know that this is salah. This is the most important thing in your life. They are obligatory. However, look at the narrations with regards to the merits of Salatul Layl. And the reward that is multiple with regards to Salatul Layl over the obligatory prayers. And sometimes when you mention examples like these are very easy to accept for an individual. They say, yeah, that makes sense. But when it comes to the Ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn, sometimes it's harder for people to accept. And For that reason, that individual that finds it hard to accept, they should ask themselves that question. What is it that is making it hard for them to accept the fadl of the Ziyarah of Abdullah over Hajj, for example, or Umrah, when the hadith are so numerous with regards to that? So we should move on again to the second question that I mentioned. Who said that the Ziyarah of al-Husayn is not wajib? Is it wajib? I would say the answer to this is absolutely and utterly yes. I do not mince my words when I say that. And the reason for that is because we have so many ahadith that are clear. If anybody was to say these words, there's no more clear than this. There's no clearer than this. And this is rooted in the Quran. What is Rasulullah asked to say in the Quran? قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمُوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. We're speaking about Rasulullah here. Rasulullah is saying, I do not ask for you anything in return for what I've given you. What has Rasulullah given us? He's given us Islam. He's given us guidance. He's given us everything that we have. To the extent, even our food and our rizq. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, as he was eating, he says, Allahumma hadha minka wa min Rasul. Oh Allah, he's thanking Allah, this is from you and from your messenger. So we understand, we have everything from Rasulullah. Imagine if Rasulullah, he comes to you and he says, listen, everything I've given you, I want nothing back for you, except just one thing. All I want from you is this. Is that not the greatest obligation that you can think of? That I want you to love my kinship. That's all. That's all I'm asking for you. So this is clear that this love for the Ahlul Bayt is an obligation that Rasulullah has asked us to have it. This is the manifestation of the love for the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Where else in the world do you see manifestation of the love of Ahlul Bayt more than you see it in the Ziyarah of Abdullah? Where do you see in the world that 20 million people are giving everything they have, are eating freely in the streets, are all walking 80 kilometers towards one goal and towards one person? Where do you see that love? This is the greatest manifestation of this ayah in the Quran that Rasulullah has obligated us with. And Ziyarah is a manifestation of this. And this is not the only ayah. Obviously the explanation there, I've had to synthesize that, right? But the hadith are clear. We have a narration from Muhammad ibn Muslim from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. He says, قال مروا شيعتنا بزيارة الحسين. Order our Shia to do the Ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn. فإن إتيانه مفترض على كل مؤمن. Coming towards it is an obligation upon every believer. يقر للحسين بالإمامة من الله عز وجل. For the one who believes in the Imam of Abu Abdullah, it is wajib for him, it is obligatory on him to come. And there are more ahadith as well. The Imam says, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, قال لو أن أحدكم حج دحره. As we're speaking about Hajj here and Ziyarah, look what the Imam says. Even for your whole life, if you were to do Hajj, ثم لم يزر الحسين بن علي لكان تاركا حقا من حقوق الله. That he would be leaving a right from the rights of Allah, وحقوق رسول الله, and from the rights of Rasulullah. لأن حق الحسين فريضة من الله واجبة على كل مسلم. Because the right of Imam al-Husayn is an obligation from Allah, it is wajib upon every Muslim. Let me ask you, if anybody, this is the Imam speaking here, if any normal individual, any scholar said this statement, what would you understand from it? You would understand that it's an obligation. These are ahadith, by the way, I'm not reading for you from some tertiary, secondary sources. This is Kamil Ziyarat. This is from our most authentic classical books, clear ahadith. And there are many more. I've chosen 2 or 3, even for women. He mentions, عن Sa'id al-Ahmasiyya, and Abi Abdullah. A woman came to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. قالت لي, she mentions, Imam Sadiq said to me, Ya Sa'id, تزورين قبر الحسين? Oh Sa'id, do you go towards the visitation of Imam al-Husayn, the grave of Imam al-Husayn? قالت قلت نعم. She said, yes, I do. You'd think, okay, that's it, the Imam's going to stop there. You say, that's very good. No, the Imam says again, he says, زوريه, still go and visit him. فإن زيارة قبر الحسين واجبة على الرجال والنساء. For the Ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn is an obligation upon men and women. Look at the emphasis that the Imam is putting into this. And it's very clear, the Imams are using very clear words here. Wajib, Mudarat, Faridatun. It doesn't require any long interpretation and long understanding, maybe is in this situation. No. All of the Imams, they speak in the exact same way. And we see this from all levels of creation. The Ziyarah of Abdullah is not something that is restricted to us, right? In our Ziyarah of Arba'een or when we go off season. All of the angels also do the Ziyarah of Abdullah. إسحاق بن عمار narrates from Imam Sadiq عليه السلام قال سمعته يقول ليس من ملك في السماوات والأرض إلا وهم يسألون الله عز وجل أن يأذن لهم في زيارة قبر الحسين ففوج ينزل وفوج يعرج. He says there is not an angel, not in the samawat or the ard, not in the heavens or the earth, except that they are always constantly asking for permission to do the Ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn, such that when an army of angels is coming down, an army is going up, constantly, in every moment. The same way we have the prophets. The prophets also the same way. The Imam says, ليس نبي في السماوات والأرض إلا يسألون الله تعالى أن يأذن لهم في زيارة الحسين ففوج ينزل وفوج يصعد. The same way, all of the prophets, they ask for the Ziyarah of Abdullah, such that when an army comes down, an army goes up constantly at the same time. This is happening in every moment when we're talking about the Ziyarah of Abdullah. And we have in the narrations as well, during the time of the prophets themselves, many of them visited Karbala. There are the narrations, for example, in Bihar we see with regards to Adam, where he is on the earth and he is looking for Hawa and he is lost and he comes past the land of Karbala and he feels a sadness in his heart. He begins to feel very, very stressed, and it mentions that he hurts his foot on the place where Abu Abdullah is to be killed. And Adam, he looks towards the sky and he is upset. He's saying, Ya Allah, have I committed some wrongdoing that you are punishing me for? I've never felt this upset or stressed in any other land that I've been to. But Allah says, no, you have not. But in this place, this is the place where your son, Imam al-Husayn, will be killed. So your blood was taken out the same way that his blood will be taken out. This is the same story that we see for Nuh, for Ibrahim, for Musa, all of the prophets. So when we talk about, for example, Mecca and the visitation of prophets, it is the same in Karbala, if we are to compare with regards to that, and even more so. So why do the prophets and angels come to do the ziyarah in every single moment? This is the manifestation of their pledge of allegiance, the covenant that they had made, which even the Hajar al-Aswad made, that the Kaaba made, which all of existence made, of Wilayah and Mudarat towards the Ahlul Bayt. And the Ziyarah of Abdullah represents this Wilayah and Mudarat. And the Ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn is not the goal in and of itself. This is the Ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn. It's not Imam al-Husayn. It's separate to his dhat, his essence. However, it takes you towards Imam al-Husayn and towards al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan. And towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. And this is why we see the narrations mention Imam Salih alayhi salam. He mentions the one who does Ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn, كَانَ كَمَنْ زَارَ اللَّهِ فِي أَرْشِهِ. He is like the one who has visited Allah on his throne. And then the narrator asks, how about if he does the Ziyarah of any other Imam? The Imam says, like the Ziyarah of Rasulullah. So we can see here, there's something very specific and special about the Ziyarah of Abdullah. That doesn't exist perhaps even for the other Ziyarahs. Why is it that the Imams are speaking on different levels when we see these ahadith? And I know that we are looking at the time of prayer, inshallah. If I can have maybe another 10 minutes, inshallah, we'll get to the end very soon. There's a principle in the hadith, قاعدة المطالع والمجال, the understanding that the ahadith are in the phases of the moon. That, and we have mentioned this in previous lectures, I'm sure, that the level of truth that is represented in the ahadith is not always the full reality. Sometimes, for example, when you look at the moon on the first night, it's very thin, and then it gets greater and greater until it's full. So you don't know. Sometimes the hadith, they're telling you the full reality, and some are telling you part of the reality. And what is clear to somebody who reads many of these ahadith with regards to the fadl of Karbala is very clear that despite everything I've said to you about the fadl of Karbala, the Imam is holding back. The Imam is not telling us the complete reality. And we see this in the hadith themselves. The Imam says, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, I'm going to read just a bit of it in looking at the time. He says, Wallahi law anni haddathtukum. If I was to tell you, bifadli ziyaratihi, if I was to tell you by Allah of His merits, of the ziyarah of the merits, wa bifadli qabrihi, la taraktumul hajj ra'sa. You would have stopped doing Hajj if I told you the merits of the ziyarah of Abdullah. وَمَا حَجَّ مِنْكُمْ أَحَدٍ. And none of you would have done Hajj. وَيْحَكْ أَمَا تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ اتَّخَذَ كَرْبَلَاءَ حَرَمًا آمِنًا مُبَارَكًا قَبْلَ أَنْ يَتَّخِذَ مَكَّةَ حَرَمًا. He says, woe be unto you, do you not know that Allah took Karbala to be a sanctuary before He did so for Mecca? So the Imam made it clear here. He said, if I was to tell you the merits, it wouldn't be from wisdom. It would be that an individual would leave Hajj altogether. This is similar to the reports we hear about Amir al-Mu'mineen. Rasulullah said, if I was to tell you the merits of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you would have done to him like the Christians did with Isa. The same way, in the ziyarah, this is how the Imam speaks. It's not that Rasulullah doesn't have the merits. He doesn't mention the merits of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He mentions many. But he says, I can still not tell you the reality. If I'm to tell you the reality, you will be confused. It would not be from wisdom. The same way the Imams hold back from ziyarah and its fadl. So this land of Karbala, it has specific maqamat as well. And we'd like to go through some of them just for the barakah. The Imam mentions, with regards to the sujood on the turba of Imam al-Husayn, he mentions as-sujood ala طين قبر الحسين عليه السلام ينور إلى الأرض السابعة. When you do prostration upon the soil, the turba that we do of Karbala, this raises your prayer to the seventh heaven. This is the fadl of just the soil of Karbala. Many people, they discuss the soil that we prostrate on from a polemical sense, missing the point completely. When you're talking about the turba of Karbala, this is its fadl. And Karbala is a part of paradise itself. We see, for example, in the narrations that it mentions, when everything is destroyed prior to the day of judgment, as the Quran says, يَوْمَ تَشَقَّقُ الْأَرْضُ عَنْهُمْ سِرَاءً ذَلِكَ حَشْرٌ عَلَيْنَا يَسِيرٌ. That the day that Allah will split the earth open, letting them rush forth, that will be an easy gathering for us. On this day, where everything is destroyed, including the land of Mecca, it is Karbala that is raised to the heavens to become part of Jannah. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says, خلق الله تبارك وتعالى أرض كربلاء قبل أن يخلق الكعبة ب24,000 عام. That He created the earth of Kaaba 24,000 years prior to the Kaaba, and He blessed it so that it remained blessed, and it will remain so until He makes it a land from the lands of paradise. And from the best place in paradise, that place where only the awliya, the close awliya of Allah will stay in paradise. So don't be ashamed. You know, when we go to Karbala and we say we are going towards paradise, or we are going towards the Ziyarah of Allah, people look at you and they say, this is ghulu, why are you saying that? No, this is the words of the Imams alayhi salam. That this is a land of paradise. This is the Ziyarah of Allah Himself. And to answer the question that we came here for today, there is none better to answer this question than Allah Himself. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam mentions that when Allah created the earth of Mecca under the Kaaba, of course the Kaaba was very proud, and it should be. The Kaaba, the land of the Kaaba said, Man mithli, وقد بنى الله بيته على ظهري ويأتيني الناس من كل فج عميق وجعلت حرم الله وأمنه فأوهى الله إليها أن كفي وقري فوعزتي وجلالي ما فضلت به فيما أعطيت به أرض كربلاء. He says, the Kaaba says, who is like me? Allah has built His house on me. People from far distances come to me, and I've been chosen as Allah's haram and His safe sanctuary. Allah revealed to it. Stop speaking and humble yourself. I swear by my glory and my magnificence that your honor compared to the honor which I have granted to the land of Karbala is like the amount of a drop of water on a needle that has been dipped in the sea. If it were not for the dust of Karbala, I would not have honored you. And if it was not for that which is held within the land of Karbala, I would not have created you, nor would I have created the house about which you boast. Therefore settle down, calm down, and become humbled and lowly, and disgraced and degraded in front of the land of Karbala. Do not be proud nor arrogant in front of it, or I will make you sink and throw you in the fires of hell. Why? Because it is connected to the Wilayah of the Imam. That is a necessity for all lands. This is why Allah speaks in this harsh tone. And these are the words of Allah Himself in declaring the sanctity of Karbala as great as it is in the riwayat, and greater than what is in the riwayat, as we mentioned. So the al-Ardh of Makkah is one that should take pride in being al-Qura, but not in front of Karbala. As Imam al-Hasan said, La yawmaka yawmaka ya Aba Abdullah, the same statement applies. La ardaka ardika Karbala. There is no land like your land of Karbala. So today, inshallah, we've understood some very important things, that each of their lands, their greatness is connected to their connection to the Imam of our time, al-Hajj ibn al-Hasan. Makkah is a significant and sacred land due to its representation of Wilayah to the Imam, facilitating our testimony of Wilayah, of the covenant that we took towards Allah, His Messenger and Ahlul Bayt. And Makkah is significant because of this. And Karbala holds a specific significance which is unmatched by any of the other lands. And by now you would have guessed that the secret for this is also the connection it has to the Mahdawi project, al-Hajj ibn al-Hasan. Think about the Mahdawi project for a moment. As of today, what fuels this manifestation of love towards al-Hajj ibn al-Hasan? Those 20 million people that walked towards Karbala, they're renewing their allegiance to the Imam of their time. And the land of Karbala represents that pure allegiance that every Shia today has towards the Imam of their time. And this is no coincidence. The relationship between Imam al-Husayn and Imam al-Mahdi, Imam Sahib al-Zaman, is not one that you do not know of. The vengeance of Aba Abdullah is taken by Imam Sahib al-Zaman. The rising of the Imam on Ashura day itself, the Imam introducing himself through his grandfather Imam al-Husayn. These are all things you know and you've read. And it is due to this connection to the project of Imam Sahib al-Zaman that the land of Karbala holds this specific sanctity that cannot be compared with anything else. So when you go back to the question at the beginning, which is superior, Makkah or Karbala? I believe the question has been answered, but there's a greater underlying answer which is more important than saying that Karbala is greater. And that answer is everything in the universe, everything in existence, it gains its value from the Kaaba of Wujud. The Kaaba of the Kaaba and everything else in existence. And that is none other than al-Hajj ibn al-Hasan. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. هذا وصلى الله على محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.